All right, let's get into one of the biggest personal finance books of all time, Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We're going to break down the story behind its very first lesson, which is honestly the foundation for everything else in the book. Right off the bat, this is the line that grabs you. Kiyosaki had two main father figures in his life. The first was his poor dad, his actual father. And this guy was brilliant, a PhD, a head of education, but he struggled with money his entire life. And then there was his rich dad, his best friend's father. This guy was an eighth grade dropout who went on to become one of the wealthiest men in Hawaii. Talk about a contrast, right? And these two men could not have been more different in how they thought about money. You can see their whole conflict boiled down right here. Poor dad always said, the love of money is the root of all evil. But rich dad, he believed, the lack of money is the root of all evil. That one tiny difference in wording created two completely different paths, and Kiyosaki had to figure out which one to follow. So that gets us to the heart of it all. It wasn't just about money, it was about two totally opposite mindsets that colored every single piece of advice they gave about how to live your life. Just look at their advice on what to do for a living. Poor dad gave the advice we've all heard a million times. Study hard so you can find a good company to work for. But rich dad just flipped that whole idea on its head. He said, study hard so you can find a good company to buy. See the difference? One way of thinking creates an employee. The other creates an owner. And it was the exact same thing when it came to risk. Poor dad's advice came from a place of fear. Play it safe. Whatever you do, don't take risks. Rich dad saw it totally differently. He didn't say be reckless. He said, learn to manage risk. And that's a huge difference. It's not about avoiding risk. It's about getting smart enough to handle it. This leads to what's probably one of the most argued about ideas in the whole book. Poor dad believed what most people believe, that his house was his biggest asset. But rich dad called his house a liability. Why? Because it was constantly taking money out of his pocket for the mortgage, taxes, repairs, all of it. He famously said, if your house is your largest investment, you're in trouble. You know, the difference even showed up in the simple words they used. Poor dad would say, I can't afford it. And that phrase is just a full stop. It shuts your brain down. But rich dad made his kids ask, how can I afford it? That's a question. It forces your brain to get creative and start solving the problem. It's like a workout for your financial mind. So picture this, 9-year-old Kiyosaki decides he's had enough of being a poor kid. He wants to learn from rich dad. But his first attempt at a business with his best friend Mike, well, it was a spectacular failure. Their big idea was to literally make their own money. Step 1, they went around the neighborhood collecting old, used-up toothpaste tubes. You know, the lead ones. Step 2, they melted them all down. And for the grand finale, steps 3, they were casting their own counterfeit nickels. I mean, you gotta give them points for creativity, right? Even if it was, a felony. Of course, his dad had to sit him down and explain what counterfeiting was, and Kiyosaki was crushed. But his poor dad said something really surprising. He told him that the most important thing was that he actually did something. He saw that taking action, even if it was the wrong action, put them way ahead of everyone who just dreams about getting rich. So, after the whole counterfeit nickel business went bust, the boys went to Mike's dad, Rich Dad, and begged him to teach them. He agreed, but his classroom was a little different. It started with a job in one of his stores. And the job was awful. For 3 hours every Saturday, they dusted cans. That's it. And for those 3 hours of mind-numbing work, they earned 30 cents. Not 30 cents an hour, 30 cents total. That's 10 cents an hour. Kiyosaki was livid. He felt used, and all his excitement about learning just vanished. This was the breaking point. He felt totally cheated. He was giving up his playtime, not for the money, but to learn the secrets of the rich. And all he was getting was treated like a cheap slave. He was ready to quit and never look back. But here's the thing. That anger, that frustration, that was exactly what Rich Dad was waiting for. This wasn't just about bad pay. This was a test. The real question wasn't about the 10 cents an hour. It was about what Kiyosaki was going to do about it. So all that frustration boils over into a huge confrontation. Kiyosaki storms up to Rich Dad, ready to tell him off, calls him cheap, accuses him of exploiting him, and that's when the real education finally starts. The first thing Rich Dad said was probably a huge shock. He basically told Kiyosaki to stop blaming him. He said the problem isn't the boss or the low pay. He said, if you think someone else is the problem, You're stuck waiting for them to change. But if you realize that you're the problem, well, then you can change yourself. And that's where all the power is. And then he explained how he teaches. He said, life is the best teacher, but life doesn't stand up and give you a lecture. It just pushes you. And every single push is life trying to tell you something. It's saying, wake up, pay attention. That terrible job wasn't just a job. It was life, pushing him to learn a lesson he'd never forget. And this whole crazy experience, the fake nickels, the terrible pay, the anger, was all designed to teach one single foundational rule. The one rule that truly separates the rich from everybody else. See, here's how most of us are taught to think. You go to school, you get a job, you get a paycheck. You live in a state of fear of not paying your bills. So you keep working harder and harder, chasing that paycheck. You essentially become a slave to money. But the rich, they play a different game. They learn how to make money work for them. They don't just see money as something to earn and spend. They see it as a tool, as an employee that you can send out into the world to work 24/7 to make you even more money. That's the real goal. So once Kiyosaki finally gets this concept, Rich Dad throws him a curveball. He tells him to go back to work at the store, but this time for free, for $0 an hour, which is a wild idea, right? It leaves you with this massive question. How in the world does working for free ever make you rich?